who definitely.
Okay. So we're just speaking a little bit more about the felt sense. So the felt sense meditation doesn't technically have like a set of structured step-by-step processes, but there are some elements that I think are interesting to mention and to have there as some guidelines. To begin with, especially if there's some trauma or anxiety, just closing your eyes can be triggering for some people, which is why quite often we give them the opportunity of closing their eyes, but we also offer the opportunity for them to just lower their gaze. And from there, it's very important that as they're not using the visual aspect, which is enabling us to actually feel safe by seeing where we are, who's around, as we're limiting that sense, we need to make sure that the body feels safe. So what we do there is we begin by referencing the parts of the body which are in contact with something that's solid, so they can actually feel grounded, supported, and held. So with that, you can invite people to recognize the sensation of the contact between the soles of their feet and the ground. They can maybe feel how their seat or their buttocks are resting. They can feel the weight of their seat in the chair. If they're leaning on a sofa, on the chair, they can also reference that support and the sensation around that. And once they have that, they actually generally can just drop into those places of support. So using, even if you want, the out breath consciously as a way of just sinking in, and you can use that kind of imagery or that language about really sinking into the chair, feeling heavy, feeling supported, and just really allowing time for that rooting of the body into the space, and then feeling safe even without their eyes closed. Mm-hmm. And so once you really sense that that's that quality of being landed, and you realize that even if you're guiding it to other people, you are also referencing that for yourself. So when I guide, I'm not actually just sharing some words and guiding another person. I'm doing it within myself at the same time. So I'm not going to continue into the next step of that guided practice until I can feel the same within myself. Because we're always, even if it's a one-to-one session or a group session, we are actually resonating, we're coming into a shared frequency. So if you don't feel fully grounded within yourself, then how can you possibly imagine that they are also grounded fully? They are feeding off your words. And your words and the tone of your voice is actually transmitting how you are feeling within your being. Okay, so for me, this is I guess one of the major points about space holding as well. It's like you're not only out there, you're here. You're here and there. You're everywhere.
Everywhere.
So what I'm saying from there is, once we've got that fully groundedness, then maybe you can like shift into the breath and observing the breath. And the reason we are just observing the breath there is to create that coherence, obviously, and that coherence in that space, and just making sure that the breath is flowing, that it's not being restricted or held. So you can just bring that awareness to the breath. And as it's not a breath practice, it's not something we're going to necessarily continue with the breath throughout this particular meditation practice, but you reference it. It's creating that coherence, that presence, and making sure the energy is really flowing. Yeah. And then as they're connecting with the breath, you're feeling the breath in the body. So you can really kind of begin to coming into their felt sense. Can you feel how the body is expanding as you breathe? Where do you feel that? Where do you reference that? Then you can take some time with that.
Mm.
And you're doing it with yourself as well. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm noticing the breath in my belly. So you can reference that, okay? So they don't have to know that through your guide, through your words, but you can say, can you feel the movement of your belly as you breathe?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just beginning to get them to become aware of what the body is doing with the breath. And that brings them into the body more fully. And once the awareness is in the body, then you maybe don't need to reference the breath anymore.
Mm.
And once they're in the body, then you can get them to get curious around the sensations. What is that sensation which is most alive for you in this moment? You know, so maybe it could be, oh, I can feel some tingling in the soles of my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And what I generally find is people, if someone is very disconnected from their body, just even doing that is really tricky to feel anything.
Okay.
Okay. But if someone is a little bit more experienced, but not that experienced, their tendency is to just jump from one sensation to another really quickly. Oh, I've got tingling there, and then I've got this here, and then like, hang on a minute.
Hold up.
What is behind the tingling? Can we just stay with that sensation a little bit longer and get curious? And that's when I talk about the kind of like the zoom, you know, can I like, or, you know, put that under a lens, that sensation under a lens, and kind of go into that sensation. And actually, that sensation itself is like a whole big entering in a whole new realm. Maybe what was it essentially a tingling to begin with, when I focus more, it expands into a pulsation. Maybe there's a color there, maybe there's an emotion, and maybe suddenly it just disappears because something else is calling. But at least I've actually really attended to that particular sensation and the energy there which wanted to be seen, and maybe even just by holding that, it gets released. In the same way as when we're giving talk therapy with somebody, quite often we don't have to do anything. It's about just being there with that person and allowing them to express themselves. And that is what just diffuses and just releases their tension. It's about doing that with yourself.
Yeah.
So how can I be with that sensation and just let that sensation maybe just kind of like change, shift, modify, and then there's nothing else to do there. And then suddenly something else says, hey, shoulder starts twitching. Oh, okay.
Do we direct it that way though? So once you've talked about that sensation and allowed space and allowed it to expand, then?
Okay, so basically there's some people who prefer to do like a body scan
I have noticed.
and actually go by areas. This could be interesting for people who have difficulty connecting with what feels alive for them and they need some kind of reference point, or because they find it difficult to concentrate because they haven't trained their attention span and their sensitivity. But essentially, this would be another kind of preliminary step in just allowing people to go towards those sensations which are coming up spontaneously. Because essentially, if we're bringing this into a therapeutic setting and you're doing a one-to-one with a client, you're actually wanting them to eventually have that autonomy to be able to say, okay, what is, like, if I'm in a situation, a stressful situation, suddenly what's happening in my body? Oh, I can feel my heart's pounding. So you want them to be able to kind of go there and actually not have to go through all these steps and see what's going on. They want them to be able to respond to what is necessary in the situation. So in every field, you can have a protocol, but essentially sticking to a protocol is actually quite limiting. At the end of the story, it can be a support, but then it limits. And we see that in every field. If you're an artist, You have to learn how to do all the different types of strokes, use of color and things. But once you've learned all of that, of course, you want to have the freedom to just be able to paint.
To paint. Yes, which is what I hear. But my thinking is, obviously, if you've got the experience, right, so you can then, like, you know where to direct that. I think my thing would be, how do I direct away from that, unless I'm basing it on my own sensations and feelings?
Base it on your own sensation and feelings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
word it through your body, through your space. This is the only way for your authentic voice to be expressed, and where the others will feel the groundedness and the solidity of your space holding.
Okay. Because there was one that was done the other day where they encouraged you to paint, like, draw an outline around the outside of your body. I guess that was to kind of allow an element of visualization, which is not necessarily what we need to do, though.
With what I can say for you as a trainer, what I've seen with students is most of the students did not get the idea.
Yeah, this is what I've noticed.
Because they brought in other beautiful and very valuable tools. I myself, as a meditation teacher, am familiar with lots of different tools, but it's not what's actually being required or requested. The actual technique is very, very simple. And quite often people want to embellish on that using visualization, using metaphor. And when we use that, we're actually bringing the awareness into a different field. It's actually not so embodied in the physical. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as you know, we have our physical body, our energetic body, we have our emotional body, our mental body, our spiritual body. And there are meditations for all of these. But really, what's being requested and required of you in this particular guided meditation is for you to actually bring people into the physical body. And of course, in that, there's going to be an awareness of the other bodies, but we don't actually want to encourage people to go out into those other fields. If something spontaneously arises, like, oh, I just suddenly had this memory of, or whatever, that's fine. It's because it's we can't separate the bodies.
Yeah. But bring ourselves back.
But we're not really promoting that in this particular practice.
Okay.
Which is why the most the practices which are actually really are responding to what's being required of you in this practice are the ones which are the most simple. It's about allowing people to have the space to sit with their sensations, to begin to describe what those sensations are, to witness how those sensations shift and change just by holding that space with oneself for oneself. And at some point with the alchemy practice, then vocalizing that. And that listening goes beyond one's own body to actually recognize that there's a shared field. And when someone else is referencing their sensation, recognizing how that as a ripple or a response is actually becomes present within our own system. And this is allowing us to recognize that we are one body. We are actually not separate bodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, so when we actually finish the practice, not only is there an enormous sensation of harmonizing within our own system, but also within that shared space.
Yes. I can have a try writing it and see
But
if I
try not to script it. I would say try not to script this practice because it's not going to be so in the present and sensitive and authentic. What I would say, if you want to practice for this, do the practice yourself and record just with your phone an
yeah,
audio of you guiding the practice from your body.
okay.
Yeah. And then
Hmm.
you can listen if you want. But I would actually say that this is going to be a much more powerful preparation than actually writing a script.
Okay. It's more for the wording but yes, yeah, okay. I understand what you
I
mean.
haven't, I haven't given you the answer that you want.
Yeah.
But
Well, it just means I need to practice practice
I
saying it
mean,
myself.
what you could do is you could we have artificial intelligence to help us. If you really want a script, you can record that and offer that recording to a platform which actually then types it out for you.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to guide a meditation reading from a piece of paper. That's not
Mm,
space holding.
yeah.
That's definitely not space holding.
Okay.
In order to be a genuine space holder, you have to be aligned in the
Mm,
center, in your center, in this present moment, and in your body. And
mhm.
from here,
Expansion. Okay. So that's my homework task. Or lead it for for the others here. Yeah, maybe.
love, I have to love you and leave you. I'm just going to
Okay.
stop the recording, okay?